Hello, and welcome to the first ever episode of House of Saint Rainey podcast. I'm John Rainey. I'm so excited to share the things that I've learned and help people awaken. This podcast is meant to be an awakening podcast. The world is not quite what it used to be. It's not what it seemed to be. There's a lot of different awakenings happening throughout the world in various fields. But what we're going to discuss on this podcast is spiritual awakening. What exactly are we awakening to? That's what we're going to talk about in this first episode. Before we dive in, I want to give a quick shout out to my sponsor, which is my book, Finding God, Losing God, Becoming God. I am an independent author full-time, and I've dedicated my life to encouraging humanity towards unconditional love through unity consciousness. And this book is one of the tools that I am sharing with the world to help positively encourage people towards a greater capacity of unconditional love. So if that sounds interesting to you, make sure to grab a copy, and I hope that it positively serves you in some way. Okay. What is awakening? So I want to approach this podcast. I want to start episode 1, actually kind of similar to how I started this book, which is just sharing the worldview. What are we awakening to? Well, to get right to it, we are awakening to oneness. We're all working our way towards discovering the meaning of life. What is going on around us? We all create these worldviews, and there's a lot of different religions that explain different worldviews, and there's a lot of different faith systems. And what I have found after coming out of a 30-year Christian faith, I have discovered the truth of oneness, of non-duality. So for brief context, just so you know who I am, I was a Christian for 30 years, a very, very, very dedicated one, highly committed. I went to Bible school. I have a biblical studies degree. I was a teaching pastor for 6 years. And after experiencing some doubts in 2020, which a lot of people did, that was a time of shaking things up, I explored those doubts with an unbiased commitment to truth. And when I did that, I ended up leaving the Christian faith and I discovered oneness. And this spiritual truth provided so much healing, so much clarity, so much peace, far and away, greater capacity for unconditional love. It produced physical and relational miracles in my life. None of that is exaggeration. That is all real life. And so when I share things on this podcast, different spiritual truths, yes, of course, I am sharing things that I have learned from different books that I've read and different resources and mentors and things of that nature. But when I talk about awakening to oneness, awakening to unity consciousness with gratitude, I am speaking from personal experience. And the miracles, the power that I've experienced, it's a tremendous amount of evidence in my life for the truth of oneness. Jesus and other spiritual influences and leaders throughout history have taught that love is the way. Unconditional love, an extreme kind of love that not only loves your friends and family, but loves with no judgment, unconditionally. You can forgive anyone. You can love your enemy. This is the way. This seems so impossible. How do we actually do this? Well, the way that we do this is by following the golden rule. That's the secret of the universe is embedded in the golden rule. Treat others the way that you want to be treated. Love others the way that you want to be loved. Now, that's like a nice principle to live by, but if you really take that to the furthest reaches and you apply that to the people who have hurt you the most, that is an extremely difficult task to accomplish. How do we do this? You love others as yourself once you first see them as yourself. That's the key. That's the way. That's the truth of Jesus, and that is the way. You love others as yourself once you first see them as yourself. That is what I like to call unconditional love through unity consciousness. This is the path to oneness. This is the path to oneness with the Father. And what I mean by that is, you'll know throughout this podcast, is oneness with the Father is unity. It is oneness with all that exists, not an external being in the sky, in a geographic location that blesses and curses. That's not what God is. That's an idea of God in this human experience. Oneness with the Father is unity consciousness. You reach oneness through the path of unconditional love. Now, the more and more that you pursue loving others unconditionally, the closer and closer and closer you get to truth. The final domino that needs to fall before reaching unity consciousness is on your spiritual journey, when you're pursuing loving everyone unconditionally. You get to this point where you need to reckon with the fact that you need to love the person who has hurt you. We all have endured so much like pain in the human experience. And inevitably, there's some people, probably the people that you're closest to, who have hurt you tremendously. On the spiritual path of unconditional love, you need to find a way to genuinely set your energy. Your energy needs to be pure love for that person. Or what I like to call supreme love, which I view as compassion, forgiveness, gratitude, and pure love for the person who hurt you the most. In my personal experience, on this spiritual journey of on this path of unconditional love, I discovered supreme love at the moment that I came to the realization I am an individual expression of spirit, and the person who hurt me is also an individual expression of the same spirit. Now, or you could use the term unified consciousness. I prefer spirit, but it's all the same thing. It's all the idea. It's just getting this spiritual perspective. I am an individual expression of unified consciousness, and so is that person. We're just having unique individual experiences. So what I'm really getting at is, when you're on the path of unconditional love, you reach the power, you reach the capacity, you are empowered to unconditionally love everyone with no judgment once you realize we are one and the same. You love others as yourself once you first see others as yourself. This is the path that Jesus teaches. This is the path that many spiritual teachers have shared throughout history. Unconditional love to unity consciousness. This is the way to oneness. This is the direct path to truth. Now, what is the truth? So the worldview that we're awakening to, that everyone must awaken to at some point, whether it's in this life or the next, or the next, or the next, or the next. I'm talking about the next physical incarnation, because we have multiple physical incarnations. And we'll talk about that on the podcast too at some point. So the ultimate truth is non-duality. It's oneness, that we are all one unified consciousness having individual experiences. Now, there's a couple of things to address to really get this settled into our thinking and into our knowing. How can we get to this place where we believe that, when life feels so not that? We are in these human bodies. There's all these separate physical forms, that the idea that we are all one seems completely nonsensical. From appearance, from like what we just like observe, it's like, I'm a human, you're a human, there's all these different physical forms. How can I say that we are one? Let's talk about that. The simplest way to get to oneness that I have processed through is going from observable life to oneness. We see that life is happening, and intuitively, we can recognize that there must be a source to life. Life is happening. There must have been a source to life. This energy source, this life source, must be outside of time and space, couldn't be created from within the universe, must be outside of time and space. So that is to be eternal. Obviously, this life source also must be omnipotent, must be maximally powerful. This might help to just clarify, I'm not talking about an external being. So rewiring your idea or your conception of what I mean by God. I'm not talking about an external being. I'm just talking about a life source, okay? For this life source to be eternal and omnipotent, by nature, inherently, this is a supreme being. Supreme, sovereign, and absolute. This being, and again, actually, I don't particularly like the word being. It's more of ultimate reality is the state of being itself. Being is kind of this like anthropomorphism of God. But anyways, for there to be, I'll just say being. For there to be a supreme being, this being is pure perfection, is absolute, is the energy of love, because love is superior by nature. And this being is absolute, totally complete, whole, cannot be added to or subtracted from. It's like an unbroken circle. It's a perfect wholeness as is. To be absolute is to be everything. Anything less than everything is not absolute, is not whole, is not complete. So unity is the ultimate truth. This is oneness. And so when you realize that, you also see that love, for example, is all that can exist in true reality. In the highest reality, in the supreme being, in this unified consciousness, pure consciousness, love is all that can exist. How can I say that? When there's so much fear, there's so much darkness and so much negativity. So that's the next thing that you need to really work through. How can you understand that love is all that exists? So our human experience right now is we perceive ourselves to be individual humans who are experiencing lower levels of consciousness of fear, shame, pride, anger, desire, etc. And there's so much negativity in the world. How can I say that love is all that exists? God is all that exists. Love is all that exists. But to understand, to fully realize the supreme nature of self, there must be the experience of duality. So let's just stick on the love example. There's a lot of different examples that we can go to, but let's just stick with love here. Loving your friends and family is very natural, very easy thing to do. Loving your neighbor can be a difficult thing to do, but loving your enemy, loving the person who hurt you the most, is a different kind of love. That is a love that transcends the ego. That is a love that knows no judgment, but fear cannot exist in true reality. For oneness, for let's just say spirit, for spirit to fully realize the supreme love in the face of fear, there must be the experience of fear, even though fear cannot exist in true reality. So there must be the illusion of fear. Of course, oneness is all that there is, and so there is no separation whatsoever. So even our own individual experiences is illusory to in ultimate reality. I know that this gets a little intense, but stick with me because it's really, really important. There must be the illusion of separation of the individual person to experience relationships, to experience the realm of duality, of good and bad, light and dark, love and fear. To love in the face of fear, there must be the experience of fear. But the experience of fear cannot exist in true reality. So any fear that is experienced must be an illusion of some kind. Now, I want to say that does not make our experience insignificant. To know that our experience is an illusion, or maybe most precisely, it's a dream. To know that our experience is dreamlike, it's an alternative state of consciousness, to know that does not make life insignificant. It's the exact opposite of that. Our experience is totally significant. As individual expressions of consciousness, we're on a journey of evolving our individual consciousness through levels of consciousness. But let me circle back here. The experience of fear is necessary for spirit to really fully realize the depths to which unconditional love can go. If all was perfection, if all was love and there was no experience of duality, how could there be how could there be the experience of love in the face of fear, which is a higher kind of love? It is a transcendent kind of love. It's not it requires detaching yourself from physical form. It requires detaching yourself, or it requires transcending the individual experience to express true love energy towards someone who hurt you. There needs to be someone who causes pain. It's necessary. That's how you can say that love is all that exists. I know that it sounds it's a bit of a wild thing to say that love is all that exists in 2025 in the human experience in general. But when you have the spiritual perspective that you are spirit, just having an individual experience. So what that means is the eternal nature, essence of who you are, it's not the human. It's not the individual human experience. That's the experience that you are having. When you see things from that spiritual perspective, you start to understand the game, you start to understand the dream, you start to understand the illusion. It's totally significant. It's an amazing, it's a magnificent opportunity to have this life experience for the purpose of experiencing love and fear, for the purpose of experiencing joy after despair, experiencing peace after suffering. That's a well-rounded human experience. The nature of oneness is limitless. And so the experience that you're having, and the experience that I'm having, it is an experience to have because you're having it. That means it's one of infinite potentials for God to explore. And again, when I say God, I'm talking about universal consciousness. I'm not talking about an external being. There's no boundaries, there's no walls, there's no form. God just is all that is. So let me kind of tighten it up a little bit. The truth is non-duality. It is oneness. We are all one in spirit. We are having individual experiences for the purpose of life and relationship. It's really for the purpose of self-realization. Spirit is realizing supreme nature of self by facing the realm of duality, by facing fear and able to express genuine love in the face of fear. This is a profound realization. We're having this individual experience for spirit to explore limitless potentials, infinite potentials, because your experience and my experience, they are experiences worth having. They need to be experienced in some way. Love is all that exists. Love is the state of true reality. Now, our universe, we experience individual separation and form. We experience fear. We experience all kinds of hell. It is an illusion. It cannot exist in true reality. It cannot. But we are experiencing a limited conscious awareness, a limited awareness of truth so that we can have this authentic experience, so that we can have an authentic experience of free will, and we can choose the path of unconditional love in the face of fear or not. And that's any choice is valid choice in this universe. The truth is oneness, and it is a powerful truth. And I'm not saying that because I read it in a book, and I'm not saying that to clickbait people. I'm telling you that from personal experience. It was when I was exploring, I was well into this spiritual journey, and I knew that unconditional love is the way. And I reached this pivotal moment of this journey of unconditional love as the direct path to spiritual truth. And I had to heal. I had to reckon with, I had to understand how to extend true love and forgiveness for the person who hurt me the most. And I had no idea how to do that. I had no clue. When I had my awakening experience, which I'll share in future episodes, when I had my awakening experience, I was actually incredibly angry. I was full of resentment. But I was pursuing forgiveness, and in my mind, forgiveness was no negative energy, even at the thought of the person. I needed to get rid of all negative energy. Now, my determination for spiritual evolution, I was determined. I had to find forgiveness, but I didn't know how to. And then the epiphany came when I was reflecting on myself, and I thought, who is the one who is hurt? Oh, it's the human. It's the John Rainey experience that's hurt, but that's not the totality of who I am. That's my lower self. That's the ego. That's the personality, the human personality. That's very temporary. It's significant, very temporary, finite experience. The eternal essence of who I am, though, that is pure perfection. It's an individual expression of unconditional love itself. When I awakened to that realization, supreme love overwhelmed me. This is the power that I'm talking about. This is the miracle. This is one of many miracles that I've experienced. Supreme love overwhelmed me. In an instant, I went for a walk as I was processing all of this. And I left for that walk maximum resentment, maximum anger. I came back from that 40-minute walk full of love. True. It was no faking. It was genuine, pure compassion, forgiveness, gratitude, and love for the person who hurt me the most. And that is the power of unconditional love, the unity consciousness. Unconditional love is the path to unity consciousness. And unity consciousness is where you realize the depth of unconditional love. It meets at that point. Your path of unconditional love culminates to the self-awakening realization that we are all one. This is the path to peace, relief from suffering, detachment from the material world. This is real power. And that's why I've dedicated my entire life to sharing this with others, because I have such a profound sense of camaraderie with humanity. Because we're all one. We're all individual expressions of spirit. We're all doing the same thing, just very uniquely, with very distinct perspectives. I honor everyone's free will. I'm not trying to control everyone has their own energy, their own free will to do as they please. So they can take a painful path that is fear-based, shame-based, full of anger and pride, etc. That is perfectly valid. It's not what I prefer. It's not a very pleasant path, but it's totally valid. Or you can take the intentional path of unconditional love, equality for everyone, empowering everyone and self, love for everyone and self with no judgment. And it's a difficult path in the sense that, like, you have to face your pain. You have to heal from your pain. You have to face the pain caused by the person who hurt you the most in order to discover love for them, or whatever kind of pain you've experienced. Once you make peace with your greatest pain in the realization that we transcend the human experience, it's all worth it. Self-realization is the most precious gift a person could ever receive in this universe. And so that's what I'm dedicating my life to sharing. So I hope that this first podcast episode was enlightening to some degree. I hope that you're excited to listen to more. This is going to be roughly the idea of the podcast, is I'm just going to kind of riff. But I wanted to start with the worldview. The truth is oneness. And as a critical mass of humanity realizes oneness and is able to release judgment, which is what Jesus says, when you no longer judge, you will no longer be judged. When you learn to forgive, you will be forgiven. When a critical mass of humans discover this energy, discover this level of consciousness, we will usher in a whole new kind of earth of peace and harmony, where love is law. So I hope that was helpful. I will see you next week in another episode of the House of Saint Rainey.